to a brand new episode of Coming Distractions brought to you by the Nerdpocalypse podcast. I'm your host, Jay. I'm here with my co-host, Brad.
Hello.
All right, guys, we're going to talk about Knives Out. Brad, you had the luxury of seeing this film, directed by Rian Johnson, starring, I'm just going to run through a couple names, Daniel Craig, Chris Evans, Jamie Lee Curtis, Michael Shannon, Don Johnson, and many, many others. This is a modern murder mystery film. You had like I said, you had the luxury of seeing this. Tell us the general premise, no spoilers, and then your thoughts on it.
Well, it's funny. So you mentioned the cast. The film actually, it's an interesting take on the whodunit genre, because most whodunits, like if you watch like Agatha Christie stuff and stuff like that,
right,
you're following like the viewer's eyes is through that of the detective who's trying to unfold the mystery.
And that's Daniel Craig.
And that's Daniel Craig in this one, who plays kind of a Cajun version of like Hercule Poirot, basically, whose name is Benoit Blanc. But he's actually kind of like the other main character in the film, because the main character in the film is actually played by Ana de Armas, who plays Marta, who is Harlan Thrombey's nurse who finds him dead. And the film kind of opens with Harlan Thrombey, who is played by Christopher Plummer. He's this world famous mystery writer who very much like lives the part. Like the decor in the house is all very like murder mystery themed. Okay. And she finds him one morning in his study with his throat slit and the knife by him. And that's kind of how the film kicks off. Initially, the death is ruled as suicide, but then a mysterious benefactor hires Benoit Blanc to investigate the death of suspicious causes, and it kind of the story picks up a week after the murder, where he's starting to question the family, and we kind of go from there. Like I said, it's really interesting because the story's told through the eyes of Marta most of the time, and for reasons that I obviously won't get into because it'd be spoiler territory, that lends itself to a very interesting storytelling of this murder mystery that's unfolding, where you constantly think that you know what's happening, but then they obviously kind of throw wrenches in the works and things of that nature, as you will.
This is an interesting genre to dig into in the modern era, just because they generally don't touch on these because of like cell phones and camera footage, like because it can upend very easily.
It's funny you say that, because a lot of modern technology is kind of woven into the plot in a lot of ways. So again, it is a very modern take on this. It's funny that you mentioned the ensemble cast, because they got a lot of really good actors to play what are relatively small roles. Like there's not many scenes that aren't flashbacks in this film that don't either have Marta or Benoit Blanc starring in them in some way, shape, or form. Like one of those two characters at least is in almost every major scene that's in the movie. And I think for Ana de Armas, she's really the star here. This is going to be a big breakout for her. She was in Blade Runner. She's going to be in the new James Bond film that's coming out alongside Daniel Craig now. And kind of using her as the analog works really well, because she is very much out of her depth in sort of helping Daniel Craig's character investigate this murder mystery. So she's like bewildered all the time when things are happening. Which
makes sense. Like, I guess it's probably almost like a take on reality, where it's like this known, like not, I won't say no name, but rather unknown actress is probably sharing screens with like Toni Collette and like all these big names. So it's like you're also out of your depth weirdly in that way too, right?
Well, and she also, her character has a fun personality quirk that makes her a very interesting character in this genre of film.
Interesting.
I don't want to spoil it because it actually factors into the plot. Rather heavily in some way, shape, or form. But she's very good in this film. Of course, Daniel Craig is amazing. He has this kind of like niche carved out now of very eccentric Southern characters.
It's so bizarre. Like of all the actors to pick that as being his through line after Bond, or sort of semi while he's being Bond, is that's not the person you would assume at all.
But the cool thing with him in this film is that he is having a lot of fun. Like he's not like scenery chewing or anything like that, but you can definitely sense he's having a good time. He has a lot of very understated comedic roles. I also have to give a big shout out to Lakeith Stanfield, who plays like the regular Boston PD detective that's investigating the case. He is like the perfect straight man to Benoit Blanc in this film, and the way that he kind of plays off of Daniel Craig.
I like Lakeith Stanfield. I think he's been doing some just, I wouldn't say peculiar, but like just such a varied amount of roles. Like just like he pops up in movies. I'm like, okay, like you're in this, but it all works. Like he's a pretty varied ability actor. I actually like him a lot, so it's good to hear that he's good at this.
And like I said, as far as Rian Johnson goes, so this is the third Rian Johnson movie that I've watched. The first two, most of you guys have probably seen if you follow film, which is Looper, and of course Star Wars Episode 8. Yeah. And this is a very different, definitely a very different look for his films, because everything is, a lot more intimate. It's more, one-on-one dialogue scenes. There's a lot more close shots in the film. There's not really a lot of huge, like, set pieces or anything like that, for sure. And I think something he does really well, and it works great for this film, is he's very good at making you feel a certain way when you have a scene between two characters that are kind of going one-on-one and having dialogue with each other. He can convey tension really well. If there's a specific emotion that he wants you to feel, he's really good at that. And I think that's a great thing in his director's toolbox.
Yeah, it is interesting, because my guess is after doing Star Wars, he probably wanted something that was, you either go one or two ways, right? You're like, I love doing these huge set pieces, and
I want to scale it back.
I want to scale it back and
more artsy film. And he wrote this film too, actually. Like he wrote and directed this as well. Yeah.
Then that leads me to believe my theory is correct. It was just like, I need to just come down a little bit, and that's cool that it. So apparently it super works.
Oh, it works very well. So the only kind of sticking point with the film for me is the third act. It treads along a little bit, and that's a shame, because the second act is really good.
Yeah.
The third act is a little bit lengthy. And there's kind of it's not quite as tightly packed as the other two acts are. It makes up for it at the end, because the ending is very satisfying. It's a very satisfying conclusion to the film. But that's the only kind of knock that I would give it. I really did have a really good time with this movie. I think if you're a fan of the like murder mystery genre, of the whodunit genre, and you're looking for kind of a more modern take on that, then this is definitely a film you should see. Really good acting performances, and just really solid all the way around. I would give it a 4 out of 5.
Okay, there you go. There you go for Knives Out. It is in theaters by the time you're listening to this, so make sure you check out this review in our podcast feed. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can go to Coming Distractions. That's in wherever you get podcasts. Or if you're listening to it and you want to watch the video of this review and many others, you can go to youtube.com/the Nerdpocalypse, and we will see you guys next time.
See ya.
Bye. You're watching the Nerdpocalypse YouTube channel. Make sure you click that button to subscribe, and check out our weekly podcast where we talk about movie, TV, news, tech, and weird stories from around the internet.